The syllabus that UPSC officially gives is only this: history of India and Indian national movement, which doesn't tell us anything. In order to understand what is the scope of the syllabus, we need to go to the previous year questions of last 10, 12 years, at least last, ideally 25, 30 years, because UPSC in art and culture history doesn't have expiry date. You can refer all the questions of last 20, 30 years nonetheless. See, what we will do through this is you will be able to deduce the pattern of the questions that are asked. I am not going through questions per se. I have just enlisted all the themes of the questions one by one over last 12 years or 10 years, and in that I have separated them theme wise. So, theme wise collection and segregation, that is being done over here, and I will walk you through the questions theme and not specific questions, and you will see the pattern emerging. You will deduce that pattern, right? Because the horizontal level is Indian history and national movement. What is that? You need to go into depth to understand कि questions क्या पूछे जाते हैं. So, it will be only in ancient, medieval and art and culture for this lecture. On the left hand side, we have prelims questions of last 10, 12 years. On the right hand side, we have some questions of mains which are of related topic. And we will come to the comparison as well, what topics are important for prelims, what topics are important for mains, what is the correlation between them, etc. So, the very first section is ancient India. In ancient India, we will cover everything that doesn't come in art and culture, that does not come in art and culture, like except for religion, art and culture, whatever remains is politics, economy, society. These three parts we will see in ancient, medieval, and then we will go to art and culture. So, IVC is Indus Valley Civilization. In last 12 years, there have been only 4 questions on Indus Valley Civilization. So, it on an average comes every third year. Last year there was no question, last to last year there was a question. So, possibly it might come in this year, that is one thing. What are the questions that were asked? If I ask you, Kashi sir, what is the most important part of Indus Valley Civilization that comes to your mind whenever you read the book, you think of it, what is that? Okay, cities and their citadels, so urbanization, planning, architecture, etc. UPSC has never asked a question on that in prelims. For prelims, the architecture is not even, it might ask it this time. I'm not saying it will not ask, but if you go by the trend, these are not the dominant themes for prelims. In 2000, 2001 also they asked a few questions. In 2002, there was a question on a comparison of site and its finds. What are the finds at that site? And these were also not about archaeology. मतलब archaeology, architecture के बारे में नहीं थे. Then you also had a question on 1 year before that on seals. Regarding that, again not on architecture. In last 10 years, if you see the questions, one is on characteristics of Indus Valley Civilization, generic character, social, etc. One is character of the people of Indus Valley Civilization, secularism था नहीं था उस type का. One is you have Indus Valley Civilization versus Rigvedic, whether horse was present or not, right? That was a controversial question that year. And then recently you had a question, which of the following sites is not Indus Valley site, and the answer was Sohoguda. So, where is architecture? What is important for us to know is that there have been 4 questions in 10, 12 years, firstly. Secondly, the important themes are not architecture for prelims. Thirdly, then what is important? What is important? If I have to reduce or deduce from this and then read the chapter, generally what we do is before reading any chapter, we go through all the previous questions to understand what is the theme, what is the keyword, what is the point, what is the dimension that UPSC considers as significant or dominant, and then we read the chapter. So, if I read these 4 questions and start reading the syllabus or chapter in the book, what will I focus upon? Apart from the usual suspects of architecture. That is not being asked. Town planning is not asked. They might ask, but so far sites are important. So yes. So location. So see, there are 2-3 things over here. 2 questions are generic questions about society, contents, and the 2 questions are comparative, in the sense that in Rigveda you had a horse, in IVC you did not have horse. So cross-cultural or cross-era comparison is important. Similarly, you have this site Sohoguda. Sohoguda is in UP, and it is one of the most famous sites belonging to Ashokan era. So even if I did not know all other three sites, whether they were Harappan or not, even if I only knew, okay, Sohagoda is famous Ashokan site, my answer is done. So question per se is not actually about Harappa, it is about the other way around. Why is Sohagoda famous? Because there is Ashokan inscription. Out of Ashokan edicts, Sohagoda has one specific inscription that talks about the conditions of difficulty of common masses. If there is famine, if there is akal, there is not enough food, then how local administration should respond to lack of food supply. How should they go out and help the people? How should they stock their warehouses, make the food available for the people? These are instructions given to local people, the local administrators by Ashoka. There are only two places like this in which we have such instructions. One is Sohagoda, other is Mahasthangarh. That is in Bangladesh now. Okay, these are not typical edicts that we see, but these are very important. The famine policy of Ashokan kingdom or Mauryan kingdom, if they ask question. Or you can use that in essay as well somewhere. Anyway, point is Vedic versus Harappa and Harappa versus Ashokan. Cross-cultural questions are coming. Secondly, okay, let us go ahead. The next dominant theme that we have is questions based on economy. Now, you might not have thought of that. Right? In ancient India, the most dominant section of syllabus is economy. Look at the questions. One question was about which of the following functions are functions of Shreni. What is Shreni?
I think guild.
Guild. Shreni is guild. Guild is nothing but organization of people belonging to the same trade or same craft. You even have Shrenis in South India, which were associations of producers, primary producers. Shankar Paddi, for example. We have Shrenis also of craft people, artists, and we also have Shrenis of merchants and traders. So, in primary, secondary, tertiary economy, at all levels, we have possible Shrenis. And there have been many Shrenis which are famous all across India for thousands of years. It is one of the most dominant topic when you see economic history of India. Shreni क्या थे, कैसे थे, क्या काम करते, उनके नाम क्या है. For example, there is this Shreni called Ayyavole 500. Have you heard of that? So today's topic will be random topic. Random discussion like this. We'll go through all the questions to get the flavor. You have it was an association of 500 traders from Aihole. Aihole? Suna hai? Okay. So that is one topic. Then you have second question, land tenures in Chola. So again, it is one of the dominant themes of Chola Empire because that Chola Empire chronologically falls between ancient and medieval. We call it either late ancient or early medieval, generally early medieval. What is the feature of early medieval? If you go by old NCERT books, the dominant feature is feudalism, right? Did India have feudalism or not? If yes, then of what kind, what nature, in which locality, what were the causes? So, feudalism is an important debate and important historiographical angle for which land grants are very important and land tenures. Because land tenures decide the rights and obligations of the cultivator. And therefore, we have various terms. Let us look at the last question over here that was asked this year. Kulyavapa and Dronavapa. These are measures of land, how to measure land, units of measurement of land. There are many more units, these are not the only two units, and you again find them on inscriptions of Gupta era. But again, land economy, very important. You have this another question from Gupta era about very simple question, the term Vishti. What does it mean? Vishti is begar, forced labor. In our Constitution of India, we have forced labor that is banned in fundamental rights. It's that. And it is also very famous because many people say that Vishti became a very normal practice of extracting tax from local people. For example, in NCERT it is given that in Assam, there was a system in which there were units of people, and one person used to spend specific amount of time in year on the farm held or owned by the king. So suppose I am supposed to pay 1/6 of tax. So I can pay 1/6 of produce, or I can give 1/6 of my time to the king to work on his land. Right? So that is a kind of labor that is being extracted. Have you heard of Junagadh or Girnar? Why is it inscription? Whose inscription is there? Yes, Rudradaman. But Rudradaman inscription is very famous because it is one of the, or generally the first great Sanskrit inscription in 150 CE. But Rudradaman inscription is not alone. It is inscribed on a stone where originally a few hundred years ago Ashoka had inscribed his inscription. On the same stone you have Rudradaman, and before that you have Ashokan inscription. And even after Rudradaman, we have Gupta inscription on the same stone. So Mauryan Empire, Rudradaman and Gupta, which is the other famous site where we have such three dynasties inscriptions at the same place, Allahabad. Allahabad pillar Samudragupta, it is actually Ashokan pillar on which we have Mauryan inscription, then we have Samudragupta's inscription, and then we also have one of the Mughal Padshah's inscription on the same pillar. So Mauryan dynasty, Gupta dynasty, Mughal dynasty, all of the three great dynasties are giving inscriptions on the same pillar. Anyway, so that Junagadh inscription specifically says, it talks about a lot of things, but it also talks about one important thing, that repairing of the Sudarshan Lake. That when Sudarshan Lake is being repaired for thousands of years again and again. So it shows how local government and state government and people are contributing to upkeep the irrigation and water supply. That is okay. But it is interesting line over there. Rudradaman says that we have repaired this without oppressing people and without extracting Vishti. So it was a point to boast that हमने काम किया, लोगों से उनका लेबर भी फ्री में नहीं लिया, फोर्स लेबर नहीं लिया, right? So it is an interesting thing. But again, coming back to our original question of economy, in Gupta era and after that, apparently the Vishti became norm. And the more the Vishti becomes norm, it is more obvious that the subject population is being exploited, right? Again, that is also considered as one of the markers और सिग्नेचर्स ऑफ फ्यूडलिज्म. विष्टि कितनी ज़्यादा बढ़ गई है. सो गुप्ता पोस्ट में बढ़ गई थी. पॉइंट इज अगेन यू हैव लैंड टेन्यूर, विष्टि, कुल्ले वापर, द्रोण वापर, थ्री क्वेश्चंस दैट आर बीइंग आस्क्ड फ्रॉम दैट डिबेट ऑफ फ्यूडलिज्म और समथिंग समहाउ एसोसिएटेड टू इट एंड लैंड इकोनॉमी मेड यू चोड़ और गुप्ता. सो इंपॉर्टेंट थीम इज फ्यूडलिज्म and its regional manifestation. You will find it in NCERT, no, don't worry. But we are trying to deduce what is important for UPSC. Then you had this question of Gupta ports, Ghantasala, Kadura, Chaul, etc. Again, economy, export, import, trade, transportation. So every second year at least, you have one question that comes from economy. That is my second learning, right? One was about Indus Valley civilization is very important. See, how is it important? Let us say in next month or next week there is prelims. I want to revise. I am very confused what to do, what to read, what not to read. 250, 300 pages book of ancient India which is very factual and boring. What to do? I will go for selective reading. What will I select? Indus Valley civilization, Gupta era, and economy parts of every chapter. That is obvious. Hitting rate is higher there. Then you have two questions. These are specific terms, and students are generally afraid of these kinds of questions. What does this term mean? They feel that we need to prepare a glossary of all the words and then remember the words by heart. Don't do that. The glossary will never be exhaustive. Never be exhaustive. You need to know the word in context, and that context is what matters. So Mahattar and Pattalika, these are like again local administrative officers. And you have Magadha. It is not Magadha, it is Magadha. Magadha is also very important because these were Magadhas and Sutas were initial traditional people who started recording history in India. Before we had the tradition of recording history officially in courts, these people at the time of Janapada, Mahajanapada, or even before Mahajanapada, they used to record histories. You see their names appearing since the time of later Vedas. And there is a huge interesting topic discussed by many historians in which they talk about how this shift took place from these traditional people who were recording history, Sutas and Magadas, to the official history recorders in the court patronized by kings. Why did that happen and how did that happen? So you will find the word Magad Suta where in which chapter? It will not come in later Vedas. Generally, it will appear in introductory part of syllabus. What is history? Who read the history? Who recorded history? The reasons behind writing history, etc. These terms appear over there. Anyway, so point is, there are 4 or 5 things that we need to know. The first thing is, when we study ancient India, we will focus on Indus Valley civilization a lot, but inside that we will focus on all other things also and not architecture only. First thing. Second thing is, economy is very important, right? And third thing is, you should focus on debate of feudalism. Don't go into feudalism था नहीं था, वो history option की बात छोड़ दो. At least the chapters which deal with feudalism in NCERT, that you should read thoroughly. And if you at all have to go for secondary thing, then you should read Mauryan chapter, Mauryan Empire and Gupta Empire. So let us add them also here, Mauryan and Gupta. This is my logical deduction from last 12 years. There is one interesting deduction as well. There has been never a question in last so many years on Stone Age. Paleolithic, Mesolithic tools, that tool, this tool. Never asked. Okay, they may be important topics, but again, it's just an observation. See, I can terrorize anybody by saying, okay, this has been not asked so far, so this is important this year. If you go by that logic, then everything is important. So, anyway, let us go to medieval. Again, very few questions on medieval directly. The first question is again early medieval, elements of feudalism directly asked. Same topic, Indian feudalism debate. Then you have the chronology, it was asked last year only, between Pratihara, Pallava, Chol, Pal, etc. So these are all regional dynasties, again during early medieval feudalism era, whether it was there or not. Go for administration. You have had 2 simple questions on administration so far. Yes. One is about Delhi Sultanate and its administration, other is Mughal administration. They had also asked a question before this time span on Ashtapradhan, Shivaji's administration. Okay, that was back in 1990s. Then they did not ask any question, and again in last 12 years only 2 questions on administration. And these are very simple, straightforward questions. But see, the questions are not factual as such, although they appear factual. Because if you read the history very carefully, history books very carefully, you will see that questions are sourced from the topics which are very debatable. And that's why highly significant. Take this question of Mughal, Jagirdaari versus Zamindari. Can you differentiate between the two? Kashi Viranna. Difference between Jagirdaari and Zamindari.
Jagirdar is land given to them so that they can collect tax and.
Okay, and Zamindar?
Zamindar, lump sum amount of land is given, and they were like feudal laws. They act as like.
Okay, I'm not still sure. Land is given to both of them by whom?
Jagirdar from king to directly from king to the person.
Okay, and Zamindar?
Zamindar, the local persons who are highly influential in society.
Exactly. So Zamindar comes at the lower level, Jagirdar at the higher level. So you have subject population, above them you have traditional leader Zamindar, the local Zamindar, and then above that you have Jagirdar appointed by the king, and then you have Padsha Salamat, the king. So the point is, Jagirdar is actually the agent of the state, and Zamindar sometimes co-opted as Jagirdar later on, but Zamindar is primarily locally entrenched. So there is always a tussle between them. Sir, आपका optional क्या है?
Sir, mechanical engineering.
Okay. There is always a tussle between them. And that tussle is very important for the stability of empire, because ultimately Mughal empire collapsed because, so to say, the balance of power between these two entities was lost. ठीक है? So the question comes from that. If you know how the Mughal empire collapsed, you would know this basic terms and difference very easily, and you will solve the question. It is not, otherwise it is a very confusing question. If you look at the options, that year again people discussed about it. Anyway, then come to next topic, Vijayanagar. The simple question on foundation, and again simple question on the taxation. The taxation question was like this: ki what are the recommendations, or what ways the taxation in Vijayanagar era, 1/6 of this, 1/5 of that, on agricultural produce and on trade, etc. There are 4 few options. But that question again appears very factual, but it comes from significant theme, as I said, because you come to know of Vijayanagar taxation from 2 primary sources. One is your inscriptions of that era, but more important than that, you have a source called Amukta Malyada, written by Krishnadevaraya himself. It's a book written by Krishnadevaraya. Wrote many books, Jambuvanta Kalyanam, for example. Kalyanam is marriage in South India, right? You have Amukta Malyada. Amukta Malyada is important because, I will write the name over here. Even this year UPSC asked question optional on that, a 10 marker directly. Although it has a very religious theme, Amukta Malyada is important because it is written by king himself, and it also gives the idea of kingship and nature of polity that he conceived as, कि राजा कौन होता है, राजा क्या होता है. His idea of kingship is given in this book. So if you have to trace political theory through indigenous sources, you don't have to necessarily go back to only Arthashastra. It is one book. People focus only on that. We have various other books in various other Indian languages, and one of the most famous books is Amukta Malyada. Otherwise, we talk of Dharma Shastra, Niti Shastra, Arthashastra, some sections of Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, etc., and that's all. So Vijayanagara is important. Then come to next part, the terms that have been asked. One term is Banjara. What is Banjara? Transporters, है ना? Where does it come in medieval India? In our history books, where does it appear for the first time? Alauddin Khilji's market reforms. When you write an answer on market reforms done by Alauddin Khilji, you know Alauddin Khilji, he carried out market reforms, and there are many interesting things कि भाई इतने सस्ता हो गया, वो सस्ता हो गया, ये सस्ता, सब कुछ सस्ता हो गया. सस्ता हुआ कैसे? राजा ने बोला सस्ता बेच. इसलिए वैसे नहीं होता है. That is also there, but he had to manage the entire logistic behind the supply into the cities. अगर खाना सस्ता मिल रहा है आपको शहर में, तो कहाँ से सस्ता आया? And in that comes the Banjara story, कि how Banjara supplied foods in so low cost, where उनको कैसे control किया. So generally in NCERT you will find Banjara word appearing in Alauddin Khilji ka market reform. Again, economy, market reform. Then you have Araghatta. What is Araghatta? Again, for Banjaras, we also have something called as in ancient India, Sarthavaha. You know Sarthavaha? This is an interesting term. So when they used to transport material from point A to point B, may it be goods, commodities, whatever, they used to go in caravans. Right? हमने कहानी सिंबाद की सफर बचपन में सुनी होगी कहानी. तो caravan जा रहा है. So Buddhist traders, merchants used to go somewhere, and they used to have their own leader. Leader is Sarthavaha of the caravan, the leader of caravan. So these caravan stories are very, very famous. Jatak Katha, if you read Jatak Katha, is very original Jatak Katha. You will find many stories in which Bodhisattva himself is Sarthavaha. So Banjara is economic term. Here Araghatta, again a dominant topic of early medieval and feudalism. Araghatta is a wheel through which you draw the water from a well, and Araghatta is a traditional wheel system. यहाँ पे जो फ्यूडलिज्म थीसिस वाले लोग होते हैं वो कहते हैं कि प्रोडक्शन ऑफ द लैंड मैटर्स, प्रोडक्शन कितना होता है, कैसे होता है, इकोनॉमी का बेस वहीं से आता है इन प्री मॉडर्न एरा, एंड फॉर दैट यू नीड टू हैव अ डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर विच विल डिसाइड कितना प्रोडक्शन होगा. जैसे कि इरिगेशन बढ़ गया तो क्वांटिटी बढ़ेगी. इफ़ यू एक्सपांड द लैंड अंडर इरिगेशन और कल्टिवेशन, क्वांटिटी बढ़ेगी. इफ़ यू गो फॉर कैश क्रॉप्स और हायर पेइंग क्रॉप्स, आपके पैसे बढ़ेंगे. सो दीज आर जनरल 3 ways. You either have 3 or 4 free labor, you extract Vishti, or you improve the technology, or you improve the crop quality, or increase the area of land. There are 3-4 ways through which you increase the production in the entire ancient medieval India. There is no 4th way. So जब आप टेक्नोलॉजी की बात करते हो, इट इज़ जनरली इरिगेशन टेक्नोलॉजी और कलम, जो पेड़ों का कलम किया जाता है वो, लेकिन उसको छोड़ देते हैं. इरिगेशन टेक्नोलॉजी प्राइमरी है यहाँ पे. पहले तो था कि एक ज़माने में आयरन आया तो आयरन के हल शुरू हो गए, दैट इज ओल्ड टेक्नोलॉजी. इरिगेशन में क्या होता है कि आप कितना मास स्केल पे पानी ड्रॉ कर सकते हो. और द बेसिक पॉइंट ओवर हियर इज व्हेन टर्क्स केम टू इंडिया टू रूल इन 11th-12th century, they along with them brought some technologies which supposedly took India out of feudalism by increasing production and then thereby trade. तो क्या क्या लाए थे? सबसे एक चीज़ हम सबसे ओल्डेस्ट पाते हैं वो है आपका शदाफ दुनिया, जिसको चरखा. चरखा came to India because of Turks. The oldest reference to it is found in the book written during the time of वो कौन सुल्ताना थी, एक रजिया सुल्ताना, sorry. So the first reference ever of charkha in India comes in the time of Razia Sultana, not before that. And there is another, that is one technology of production. Textile industry को उससे बढ़ावा मिलता है. And the second interesting technology that Turks brought is Persian wheel. Persian wheel is nothing but a gear and pulley system to draw water from well. So पहले Persian wheel था कि नहीं था? So we have various proofs कि Persian wheel था नहीं था, पुराने ज़माने में पानी कैसे निकालते थे, वो सब चीज़ें हैं. तो पुली सिस्टम कितनी थी, व्हील सिस्टम कितनी, एनिमल पावर कैसे यूज़ करते थे, बैल को घूमता रहेगा तो पानी आते रहेगा टाइप, ये सारी चीज़ उसमें. ये अरघट्टा एंड पर्शियन व्हील इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. अगेन इकोनॉमी, प्रोडक्शन, टर्म्स आर नॉट कमिंग इन द वैक्यूम. Then you have third question, Kakatiya port. Now you can look at this question in 2 ways. The question was which of the following ports, and answer was Motupalli. Motupalli is a very famous port in Andhra at that time. Motupalli. If we follow our theme, it comes in tertiary economy, trade, export, import. And we also have seen there was one question asked on ports in ancient India, Chaul, etc. So ports are very important. That is one thing. There is another way of looking at this question. If you categorize it differently, Motupalli is famous because there was one foreign traveler who came to India, wrote about it, Marco Polo, in 12th-13th century. Marco Polo had come to Kakatiya Empire and he wrote about Motupalli. Motupalli is a port from which we export lot of precious stones and diamonds. So it was one of the most important trade centers and emporium for diamond trade. Diamonds were sourced from inland or hinterland and they were exported from Motupalli. That's what Marco Polo writes. You know Marco Polo, he went across the world. So again, economy or literature of foreign authors. You can categorize the question in both the ways. Either you will find the answer if you read economy very closely, or you can also find the answer if you read the stories written by foreign authors who came to India, foreign travelers. In that you come various foreign travelers. You have Chinese, you have Korean. For example, you have, who are the Chinese travelers to India? Buddhist travelers we know. Yuan Sang, Fai Yan, one more, I Ching. But generally, see, it is a history class, so you should go chronologically always. When you enlist all the Chinese travelers, you start with Fai Yan, then come to Yuan Sang, and not the other way around. Fai Yan came first, and then came Yuan Sang. And if you can't remember that, there is a short way. Yuan Sang starts with H, he came during the time of Harsha, H and H. You remember that way. Then Fai Yan comes first in the late Gupta era, Yuan Sang, in Harsha era, and after that a century or two afterwards you have Itzing or Aiching. But apart from that, we also have some Korean traveler called Hyuncho. Hyoncho, Hyuncho. So you have various travelers. Even before Chinese came Greco-Roman travelers like Megasthenes. And you have various accounts of foreigners who never visited India. And their accounts are very Pliny the Elder. Pliny, he is very important. You have many such authors. Then you have Arabic authors, Al-Masudi, Al-Sulaimani. Then you have Persian authors. You have travelers, and then finally you have European authors as well. European travelers who came to India left their accounts. So when you read the sources written or left by these foreign visitors to India, you can also find the answer to a question like this, or you can find the answer straight away in economy wala part. These foreign travelers become very important when we talk about Vijayanagara, because they give first hand account of how the empire looked like. And there are 5-7 very typical authors which are quoted everywhere. We should know them by heart. These are the 5 people visited Vijayanagara in time of this, and they talked about that. This is very basic thing. It is there in NCERT, old and new both. Next question that was asked this year about Hundi. I think it was a simple question. Hundi as are used still today. If you go and visit RBI website, they give a list of hundis in history of India. Hundi nothing but promissory notes. Various बादशाहs even used to use hundis. हुंडी का मॉडर्न अवतार आज के दिन में क्या होता है पता है ना? हवाला. हवाला इज नथिंग बट हुंडी. यहाँ पैसे दो, वहाँ से रिडीम कर दो. ठीक है. हुंडीज हैव मल्टीपल टाइप्स. जोखमी हुंडी, दर्शनी हुंडी, etc. There are many hundi types based on the risk and rights both. So hundi is nothing but, and hundi is important because it shows to what level the economy has become complex as to go to the level of hundi of multiple types, because we had various financial instruments in medieval era. Hundi is one. We had brokerage, we had insurance of content and carriage insurance, both were there. Okay. We had even a way of joint stock, in which not joint stock company as such with limited liability, but we have people coming together doing sajha bhagidari, putting their shares and doing business. So we have various economic and financial instruments developed which are suitable for any developed economy. I won't say modern as such, but developed economy, and this is early modern era anyway. So hundi is very important economic term. Then you have this year again Aurang, Baniya, Mirasdar. These questions, this Mirasdar is a land tenure. Zamindar, Mirasdar, Saranjamdar, these are land tenures in Deccan. In Deccan we don't have Zamindar, we have Mirasdar, Saranjamdar, etc. But the same term that was asked earlier, Jagir Zamindari, we have Mirasdar. Aurang is the term you find in new NCERT, and Aurang is important because when Europeans came to India and started taking the Indian commodities outside to and exporting it to outside world, they had their local factories, and factories were manned by factors. The officer was called factor, and he had various people working for him. So Aurang was one person or post or position who used to source all the textile from the villages, put them at one place and do all those things. So in textile procuring system of East India Company or other foreign companies in early modern area, Aurang is an important place. We have other also various names. Again economic. So all these words appear as if they are factual, but they are coming from economic aspect. So again for medieval India, what is important? 2-3 things. Firstly, you need to focus on early medieval and feudalism. I'll write them so that you can note them down. First thing is, based on all the deduction, early medieval or feudalism is important, and in all its aspects, not only Chola but all the regional dynasties. Then you have Vijayanagara, which is important. The questions are asked from that. And then you have economic terms. So if I deduce, I'll find these 3 things.
Hit the bell icon to never miss an update from Level Up IAS. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.